Although this topic is highly controversial, it is still possible that in ancient times, intelligent life may have existed on Mars. This idea should be approached with skepticism, yet we should not close the door on new perspectives. In fact, it is not a concept reserved only for those who dare to challenge the boundaries of knowledge. Pyramids on Mars, tall and slender beings, monuments, or planet-wide catastrophes. These accounts are found in a declassified document that both surprises and unsettles with the details it reveals. Why would a US government agency choose to investigate Mars using such unconventional methods? What were they hoping to discover? And how much truth lies within the descriptions? Next, we will attempt to answer those questions by diving into a document that challenges logic while sparking both wonder and skepticism. We will present facts that are as fascinating, if not more so, than any science fiction film. We will also examine NASA mission images showing formations that at least appear artificial. I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. Socrates, Wag 1, the Mars Exploration Document, May 22, 1984. This is a fascinating file declassified by the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, in 2000. It details an experiment conducted on May 22, 1984. The objective was to explore what might exist in very specific regions of Mars. During the session, the monitor provided the subject, who was believed to possess psychic or remote viewing abilities, with a set of coordinates. MON stands for monitor, and sub refers to the subject. The monitor was likely a CIA officer or session facilitator, while the subject was the individual said to possess remote viewing abilities. Before the interview, the subject was given a sealed envelope, which had to remain unopened until after the session. Inside the envelope was a card containing a single instruction: Planet Mars. Time of interest: approximately 1 million years BC. Throughout the session, the monitor provided the subject with several geographic coordinates, but never mentioned that they were from Mars. This method was intended to minimize the possibility that the subject might be influenced by prior knowledge or expectations. The first thing the monitor said to the subject was, "Okay, now, using the information in the envelope I've given you, focus your attention now, using the information in the envelope, on 40.89 degrees north, 9.55 degrees west." This raises the first question. How could the subject possibly know what was inside the sealed envelope? Could he perceive its contents mentally? Was the subject a clairvoyant psychic? After a few responses from the subject, the monitor said, "All right. Now move to the time indicated in the envelope I gave you and describe what's happening." This appears to imply that the subject already knew what was written inside the sealed envelope, despite the fact that it had not been opened. Furthermore, the monitor never once mentioned the word Mars during the entire session. It appeared only on the outside of the sealed envelope handed to the subject. If the subject truly read the contents mentally, this would fall under what is known as extrasensory perception or psychic cognition. Such abilities would have profound implications for spiritual research and human consciousness. Did the subject possess a mental capability that allowed him to read the information inside the envelope? Or did he infer it indirectly from subtle cues given by the monitor? And what exactly did the monitor know? There is no definitive answer, as the document does not clarify this information. But the subject's later responses are even more astonishing. 2. The session, the subject's descriptions. The first set of coordinates given by the monitor was 40 tois, 89 degrees north, 9.55 degrees west. Surprisingly, the subject said, "I want to say it looks like, I don't know, it looks like. I'm kind of getting a tilted view of a shape, a pyramid or pyramids. It's very tall, like it's sitting in a huge, depressed area. When comparing this to modern images of that Martian coordinate, one can indeed identify a type of mountain not far from the target point, though there are no clear signs of actual pyramids. Interestingly, this is the very same geological formation that was interpreted as a face in 1976, though years later it was confirmed to be just a mountain. Was the US agency trying to determine whether there were additional areas on Mars when NASA had photographed the so-called face? Why did the subject mention pyramids at all? Was he describing the mountain, perceiving something beyond its appearance, or were his reactions shaped by subtle suggestion? At the same coordinates, the subject also said, large flat surfaces, very smooth, angles, walls, they're really big. I mean massive, megalithic. The term megalithic refers to prehistoric monuments built from enormous stone blocks. Could the subject truly have seen something like that? Next, the monitor instructed the subject to move to 46.5 degrees north, 353.22 degrees east. The subject replied, deep inside a cavern, not really a cavern, more like a canyon. I'm looking up the sides of a steep wall that seems to go on forever. He continued, and it's like an architectural structure, like the canyon walls themselves have been carved. Again, I'm getting a really big structure, not complex, just huge smooth slabs of stone. It seemed as if the subject was describing something resembling an enormous artificial canyon with massive smooth stone surfaces. He spoke of towering ceilings and maze-like spaces, which he suggested might be rooms or halls within. Some interpret this account as speculative evidence of ancient constructed formations. Others believe it reflects the subject's imagination or subconscious pattern recognition. Modern imagery of that region of Mars, captured by orbiters like the Mars Global Surveyor, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, or European missions, shows no carved canyons or artificial structures. What is seen in the high-resolution images of these Martian coordinates are natural geological formations, craters, plateaus, troughs, and cliffs typical of the Martian surface. However, when the monitor instructed the subject to move to 45.86 degrees north, 354.1 degrees east, the subject gave a startling response. They have what seems to be the end of a very large road, and there's a very large marker, kind of covered like the Washington Monument. It's like a memorial. Exploration of that region of Mars reveals no memorial-like tower or vertical artificial structure. No monument-shaped formation has been identified in satellite imagery. Next, the monitor directed the subject to 80 degrees south, 64 degrees east. The subject said, "See the pyramids. Can't tell whether they're covered or not, because they're different. There are both kinds, and they're huge." Shortly after, the subject added, "They're like shelters from storms." The monitor instructed him to go inside one of the structures. The subject said, "Different rooms, but they've been stripped of any kind of furnishings or anything. It's like strictly functional, a place to sleep." The monitor then asked him to describe the beings who were sleeping there. The subject said, very tall as well, very large, people, but thin. They look thin because of their height, and they're dressed in, oh my, it's like a very light silky material, but not flowing clothes, more like a fitted cut. They're ancient. They're dying, past their era or age. They're very philosophical about it. They're looking for a way to survive, but they can't. They seem unable to escape, unable to find a way out. So they're holding on while watching or waiting for something to return, or something that brings an answer. When the monitor asked what these ancient beings were waiting for, the subject replied, they apparently won. One group or some of them went to search for a new place to live. I'm getting all kinds of overwhelming input about the deterioration of their environment. Things are collapsing very quickly, and this group went somewhere, like a long journey, to find another place to live. The monitor then said, "All right, now before you leave this person, ask him if there's any way you can help him. Ask him whether he knows who you are, and whether you can assist him in his present difficulty." The subject answered, "All I'm getting is that they must wait. He doesn't know who I am. Thinks I'm some kind of hallucination or something." When asked how the other beings left, the subject explained, "It looks like inside a larger boat. The walls are very rounded and shiny metal." The monitor instructed the subject to accompany them on their journey and learn where they were going. The subject said, "Impression of a really crazy place with volcanoes and pockets of air with strange plants. A very volatile place. The difference is there seems to be a lot of vegetation that the other place doesn't have, and different kinds of storms." 3. Possible explanations. The descriptions provided by the subject are difficult to interpret. Is there any reasonable explanation for the visions of artificial structures and what appear to be extraterrestrial beings? Is it merely a coincidence that the subject described a pyramid in the same region, where the famous Face on Mars photograph was taken in 1976? It is important to note that the monitor or facilitator never once mentioned the word Mars. Only a sealed envelope containing the general context of the session was given to the subject. The truth is that by 1984, when the remote viewing session took place, we already had a fairly complete map of Mars. Missions such as Mariner 9 and the Viking orbiters had photographed and mapped nearly the entire planet. This allowed the identification of major geological features, including volcanoes, mountain ranges, and large craters. Therefore, at the time of the experiment, May 1984, the scientific community already knew about the mountainous formations in those specific regions of Mars. The exact location of the face was also known, and by the late 1980s, authors like Richard C. Hoagland were discussing supposed ruins on Mars. It cannot be ruled out that the subject might have been remotely perceiving Mars from Earth, using some form of expanded consciousness. However, given that, at least officially, the remote viewing program was dismissed by the CIA, other explanations remain possible. This highlights one of the core weaknesses of remote viewing. There is no objective mechanism to ensure that the subject is truly perceiving the location indicated by the coordinates. In other words, the subject may describe anything their mind associates with the prompts, without any certainty that they are actually seeing Mars. If the subject claims to be observing Mars, how can the monitor confirm that? On the other hand, it is also possible that the psychic perceives some images accurately while misinterpreting others. So what explains the descriptions of pyramids, memorial towers, and tall, slender beings? One possibility is that the subject truly possessed remote viewing abilities and genuinely saw Mars, along with those structures and humanoid figures. Another possibility, as we will explore next, is that the subject was influenced by the culture of the time, when Mars was commonly associated with ancient civilizations. If the subject subconsciously linked the session's target with Mars, then their descriptions may reflect those preconceived ideas. 4. The face on Mars and other discoveries. The image known as the face on Mars originated from a photograph taken by the Viking 1 probe in 1976. When the images were examined, a plateau appeared with shadows resembling a human face, with what looked like eyes, a nose, and a mouth. This discovery had a strong impact on space exploration enthusiasts and quickly drew media attention. As the photograph circulated, curiosity increased regarding the possibility of artificial structures on Mars. Articles were published suggesting the ruins of a vanished civilization. Some theories proposed that the face had been carved thousands or even millions of years ago. Highly speculative ideas, but ones that captivated amateur researchers. Interpretations of this discovery also attracted skeptical voices, who offered alternative explanations. Some argued that the face was nothing more than a natural shape formed by the interplay of light and shadow. Erosion, combined with the position of the sun over the Martian surface, would be enough to create the illusion of human-like features. Even so, that original image remained deeply embedded in the public imagination. It invited speculation, hinting at the possibility of a forgotten past where colossal beings once carved monuments into the Martian landscape. Decades passed, and by the 2000s, additional photographs were taken. New missions equipped with advanced cameras captured higher resolution images that revealed the region in far greater detail. The interplay of light that once suggested facial features became much less pronounced under different solar angles. It was confirmed that the so-called face was indeed a natural landform, surrounded by grooves and cracks. Interestingly, one archived image stored on the University of Arizona's digital platform shows the formation with a square-like shape and seemingly straight edges. It was captured by the Mars Orbiter camera, which orbited the planet from 1997 to 2006. Is this structure artificial or natural? On Earth, square or right-angled shapes are often associated with human activity, though under certain conditions they can also arise through natural geological processes. On Mars, there are other natural shapes that resemble smiling faces or even hearts. Straight formations on the Martian surface could be the result of tectonic activity, erosion, or ancient geological processes. It is also possible that Martian winds sculpted a form with sharp edges, though such shapes tend to be less common. This particular image was taken more than 2 decades ago, so whether the structure is artificial or natural, it may now be partially buried under Martian dust. Perhaps in the future, robotic or human missions will explore this region to determine what truly lies there. 5. The tall and slender beings. I only see very large people. They seem thin and tall, but very large. Wearing some kind of strange clothing. The declassified 1984 document describes beings with tall, slender physiques. They appear in a setting marked by violent storms and massive architectural structures built from enormous stone blocks. The account notes that these beings wore unusual garments and seemed to be experiencing a period of great difficulty, as if they had outlived a once glorious era. The subject conveyed a sense of melancholy, as though they were waiting for something that would never arrive. He mentioned that they built defensive systems against harsh conditions and sheltered in large interior spaces, perhaps to protect themselves from dust storms or dramatic atmospheric changes. It is possible that details about their height reflect the popular culture of the time. From the mid-20th century onward, the fascination with science fiction and visitors from other worlds grew rapidly. Movies, TV shows and novels often depicted alien civilizations composed of tall, elegant, intelligent beings in decline, very similar to the tall, slender figures described here. But what if the subject in the 1984 document truly saw real beings? The gravity on Mars is about 1/3 that of Earth. Any form of life living there would experience far less gravitational pull than we do. Put simply, a person weighing 132 pounds or 60 kilo on Earth would weigh only 44 pounds or around 20 kilo on Mars. This difference means that movement on Mars would feel much lighter. With reduced body weight, it is conceivable that extremely tall and slender beings could have existed on the Martian surface. 1 million years ago, when the remote viewing session attempted to access Mars's past, the planet's gravity was essentially the same as it is today. However, there are other factors that determine the development of complex life forms, including humanoid extraterrestrials. Lower gravity alone is not enough for life to evolve as we know it. Mars is typically cold for most of the year. Life would need protection from radiation and drastic temperature fluctuations. It would also require access to reliable energy sources and a stable supply of water. Around 3 to 4 billion years ago, Mars is believed to have had a thick atmosphere, moderate temperatures, and stable liquid water. That warm and wet era could have supported the emergence of some forms of life, at least microbial. As the planet gradually lost its atmosphere and became cold and dry, water disappeared from the surface or became trapped underground as ice. The subject in the 1984 experiment mentioned seeing a geological problem on Mars. Was he referring to the planet's increasingly inhospitable conditions? That remains speculative. There is no scientific evidence that such beings ever existed on Mars. Spacecraft and rovers exploring the Martian surface have found no traces of biological organisms. Today, the focus is on searching for signs of past life, especially microbes, by analyzing rocks and sediments that may have once interacted with water, back when Mars had a more favorable environment. Six, the monument. They have what seems to be the end of a very large road, and there's a very large marker, kind of covered like the Washington Monument. It looks like a memorial. The moment the subject mentioned a monument while describing the area near 45.86 Deganen and 354.1 Ligul Kinti was especially striking. He referred to the Washington Monument, a tall, upright structure, as if identifying a massive landmark. The word obelisk is typically associated with ancient Egyptian culture, though similar monuments exist around the world. Back in the mid-1980s, linking monuments to Mars was not a common idea. However, fascination was growing regarding ancient civilizations on Earth and the possibility of discovering similar structures on other planets. Numerous films and publications suggested that Mars may once have hosted advanced societies that left behind grand ruins. Yet according to modern data, no vertical structure resembling a monument has been found in that region. High-resolution images captured by orbiters and landers show terrain marked by hills, craters, and formations shaped by wind and geological activity. None of these natural features display the height or vertical alignment typically associated with a monument or an Egyptian-style carved obelisk. Even so, the subject may have interpreted a rock outcrop or raised terrain as a monument, especially if his descriptions were based on vague impressions or mental images of geometric shapes. Another possibility is the human tendency to recognize familiar patterns, a phenomenon known as pareidolia, which can cause elongated or isolated shapes to resemble monuments or towers. 7. Who was the remote viewing subject? The identity of the experiment's participant has never been officially confirmed. The document does not mention the name of the individual, consistent with the security practices of government agencies at the time. In remote viewing experiments, subjects were often government employees, military personnel, or private contractors believed to possess psychic abilities. To protect their identities, names were removed from official documents or replaced with generic labels such as subject or participant. However, it is known that several individuals involved in Project Stargate participated in remote viewing sessions. Ingo Swann was a key figure in the remote viewing field and a pioneer of psychic exploration experiments involving extraterrestrial targets. Even so, there is no definitive evidence that he was the subject in this particular case. Joseph McMonigal, another prominent participant in the Stargate program, conducted hundreds of remote viewing sessions and has spoken publicly about his involvement, though he has never claimed any connection to this specific document. Given the nature of the experiment and the use of advanced remote viewing techniques, it is likely the subject had prior experience with this practice. 8. The Pyramid Controversy. Since the 1970s, NASA's Viking missions, which launched in the mid-1970s, marked a defining moment in Mars exploration. 2 orbiters and 2 landers returned detailed images of the red planet, capturing widespread interest among both scientists and the general public. Before these missions, only blurry photos from earlier spacecraft existed, but the Viking probes provided a much clearer view of the Martian surface. With this improved perspective, unusual features in certain regions drew attention. Some people interpreted them as possible structures built by an ancient civilization. One specific region, known as Cydonia, became the center of focus. This area contains numerous eroded mesas and plateaus, yet some images suggested pyramid-like shapes or symmetrical monument-like forms. This discovery sparked excitement, as Mars was already known to have possibly contained liquid water at some point, fueling speculation about the potential for life. Interpretations of these images vary depending on the audience. Some publications discuss clearly defined pyramid-like structures, analyzing shadows and contours to estimate size and symmetry. Others take a more cautious stance, suggesting that erosion and the natural shape of rock formations explain the illusion of artificiality. Interest grew as people attempted to link these alleged structures with ancient cultures on Earth. Several texts drew comparisons between the Egyptian pyramids and the so-called Martian pyramids, suggesting a possible connection. Other theories propose that if inhabitants once existed on Mars, they may have constructed these architectural structures for religious or astronomical purposes. Although most of the scientific community considers these ideas exaggerated, they acknowledge that widespread public interest helped drive funding for future exploratory missions. Nine, remote viewing and government agencies. Remote viewing emerged in the early 1970s at the Stanford Research Institute, SRI, in California. Researchers Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ investigated the ability to describe distant locations using perception beyond the normal senses. Around 1972, the CIA and other US federal agencies grew increasingly interested when reports suggested that the Soviet Union was investing resources into psychic research. Fearing they might fall behind in a potential psychic battlefield, the CIA decided to fund remote viewing experiments to determine whether such claims had any real basis. In 1995, after an evaluation by the American Institutes for Research, the CIA concluded that remote viewing offered no clear operational value for intelligence work. That same year, most of the information was declassified, including the official name of the program, Project Stargate, which was then released to public archives. Project Stargate was the umbrella term for several research programs focused on extrasensory perception, funded and managed by US government agencies from the late 1970s to the mid-1990s. The core of remote viewing involved placing a volunteer in a relaxed state that enabled them to perceive a target, whether an object, facility, or geographic location. Numerical coordinates or other cues were provided to guide the session. The volunteer would then describe what they perceived: architectural features, colors, or impressions. The goal was to cross-reference these descriptions with independent data to test accuracy. Thus, by 1984, when the remote viewing experiment on Mars was conducted, CIA-backed programs were still actively operating under Project Stargate. The Face on Mars image had already been released in 1976, years before the session took place. For this reason, some speculate that the CIA may have been curious to see whether anything unusual existed in that specific Martian region. 10. What was the CIA looking for? The CIA has never officially explained why it explored the possibility of remote viewing on Mars, but several reasonable hypotheses exist. One possibility is that the agency wanted to investigate whether structures or artifacts existed that might indicate the presence of intelligent life, either past or present, on the red planet. At the time, science had not found definite evidence of life, but speculation arising from Viking images and theories of ancient Martian civilizations may have encouraged deeper research. Another hypothesis is that the CIA simply wanted to test the range and limits of remote viewing abilities. Mars, being a distant and inaccessible target, presented a unique challenge to determine whether the technique could produce accurate descriptions of far-off or unreachable locations. Such experiments could also help the CIA evaluate whether remote viewing might be useful for real-world intelligence work on Earth, such as locating enemy facilities or gathering information about restricted areas. The most speculative hypothesis suggests that the US government already possessed knowledge of extraterrestrial life. Allegedly, in 1933, a bright red UFO incident occurred in Italy, in which an unknown aircraft crashed and was stored inside a hangar near Milan. July 1947 marked the famous Roswell incident, where a craft believed by some to be extraterrestrial, along with its occupants, was said to have been recovered. This event adds to more recent claims made by former Area 51 personnel, who stated that some extraterrestrial spacecraft were not crash debris at all, but were actually discovered during archaeological excavations. Some believe these incidents are all connected to alien technology, while others dismiss the claims entirely. But there is more. In 2020, the Pentagon declassified 3 astonishing videos showing unidentified flying objects performing extraordinary aerial maneuvers. In 2023 and 2024, former military personnel and government contractors testified before the US Congress, making shocking claims about the recovery of non-human spacecraft and biological entities. If these claims are eventually confirmed, they would introduce a new hypothesis regarding the CIA's remote viewing experiments on Mars. Were these sessions part of an effort to understand and classify beings and artifacts allegedly found on Earth? At the same time, it is important to consider alternative possibilities. The session described in the declassified document presents vivid imagery and concepts, but lacks direct evidence. What if the objective was not to investigate Mars, but to create public noise, perhaps to divert attention from sensitive operations or other strategic goals? 11. Humanity's fascination with Mars. Ancient cultures observed the red light in the sky and associated its color with gods and mythology. Egypt, Babylon, and Greece recorded the planet in their texts, reflecting a long-standing interest in its movement among the stars. In Greco-Roman times, Mars became associated with warlike characteristics. Ptolemy mapped its path and classified its position using simple instruments, sparking curiosity about its unusual behavior. Centuries later, the invention of the telescope ignited deeper study of nearby planets. Galileo Galilei observed a disk that looked different from the stars, while others attempted to detect features on the Martian surface. In the 19th century, Italian astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli published maps showing lines on Mars that he called canali. This sparked ideas about constructed canals and ignited widespread imagination. Percival Lowell expanded on this idea and argued for a design network built to transport water. He described supposed engineering projects and spoke of Martian civilizations struggling in a desert-like environment. His lectures and writings stirred amazement. Some of his colleagues doubted the accuracy of Lowell's illustrations, but the public eagerly embraced the idea of intelligent life on the distant world. Early scientific debates became heated. Some supported the theory of artificial canals, while others pointed to optical illusions or misinterpretations. The media amplified these assumptions. Newspapers promoted the idea of a populated Mars, and readers were fascinated by the concept of beings struggling with water scarcity. Literature further expanded this vision, with novels expressing both fear and hope about contact with Martians. H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, published at the end of the 19th century, depicted invaders from the Red Planet. That story caused a sensation. It raised the question of whether such beings would be peaceful or hostile. The book introduced the possibility of conflict between civilizations, resonating strongly with those fascinated by scientific advancement at the time. Ray Bradbury offered a more nostalgic perspective in The Martian Chronicles, published in 1950. He explored the fragility of the human experience in a world beyond Earth, blending melancholy, encounters, and reflections on loneliness. Mars became a central element of popular culture, appearing in films, radio programs, and countless forms of storytelling. Many of these works embraced the idea of discovering ruins, abandoned cities, or advanced societies. Meanwhile, astronomical surveys confirmed a barren landscape marked by traces of ancient water flow, clues that only deepened the belief that something remarkable may once have existed there. 12. A lost city. Analyzing the quadrilateral formation. Since the first probe sent back detailed images of Mars in the 1960s, theories have emerged about the possible existence of surface structures. Photographs taken by the Mars Global Surveyor, which orbited the planet from 1997 to 2006, provided some of the most detailed views of the Martian landscape to date. Among the many areas photographed, certain regions displayed geometric patterns that appeared too orderly to be entirely natural. Specifically, quadrilateral shapes and straight lines in areas such as Elysium Planitia and Utopia Planitia attracted significant attention. Some interpreted these configurations as potential remnants of ancient Martian cities, eroded buildings, or even canal systems connected by roads or walls. The arrival of the HiRISE camera in 2006 aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter greatly expanded the ability to observe the planet at higher resolutions. This technology captures features as small as 1 meter per pixel, helping clarify many shapes previously thought to be artificial. HiRISE revealed that most of these features were caused by surface cracks, sedimentation and erosion processes, and patterns created by the sublimation of subsurface ice. However, these scientific explanations have not always convinced those who continue to believe in the possibility of ancient cities on Mars. 13. The Martian Catastrophe. The 1984 declassified document describes violent storms and a geological disaster, connections that, in some circles, have been linked to the idea of a planetary cataclysm. Some suggest that the catastrophe described mirrors the comet impact theory, a major event capable of causing sudden changes, possibly explaining the loss of much of Mars's atmosphere. Data gathered by multiple probes indicates that Mars once had liquid water and a far thicker atmosphere. Today, however, it is dry, cold, and its atmosphere thin. A collision with a large comet could have released enough energy to strip away a significant part of that protective envelope. The impact, or shock wave, could have caused an initial period of heating, followed by the rapid loss of key atmospheric gases. Researchers believe such events occurred billions of years ago, during a time when the solar system was filled with roaming celestial bodies. The comet theory is partially supported by studies showing massive craters. Mars's surface features huge basins such as Hellas, which may have been formed by ancient impacts. Could a comet strike be the cause of the collapse described in the visions of the tall Martian beings? That remains another speculation without verified evidence. 14. The transfer of life between planets. This concept is known as Panspermia, suggesting that life did not originate on Earth, but instead arrived here from space via meteorites or other celestial bodies. Mars, with its potentially habitable past, stands out as a strong candidate for such a transfer. Billions of years ago, the red planet had warm and wet conditions, with liquid water on its surface. These circumstances may have supported the development of simple life forms such as microbes. If any of them survived an impact event, they could have traveled to Earth inside fragments of Martian rock. In fact, this process has been observed. Some meteorites on Earth have been confirmed to originate from Mars. A number of studies have searched for signs of life within them, though no convincing evidence has been found so far. Panspermia also raises the possibility that life might have migrated from Earth to Mars. But this idea faces several challenges, including the vastly different atmospheric and geological conditions between the two planets, making survival and adaptation difficult. Another important issue to consider is whether microorganisms could survive the harsh environment of space. Their chances of enduring the journey and successfully establishing life on another planet remain low. However, some microorganisms on Earth have demonstrated extraordinary resilience under extreme conditions, suggesting they may have a higher probability of surviving an interplanetary journey than previously thought. A specific form of panspermia is known as directed panspermia, the idea that intelligent beings from advanced civilizations intentionally send seeds of life to other planets. The 1984 document mentions that the tall, slender beings were seeking a way to survive on a planet that had become uninhabitable. If Mars had once been home to a thriving civilization, it is conceivable that they may have looked toward Earth as a potential refuge for survival. This parallels what humanity is doing today, developing technologies that may one day allow us to reach and settle on Mars. In the event of a catastrophe, for example, a meteor wiping out life on Earth, Mars could be the nearest planet where a new civilization might begin. The subject in the experiment described groups of beings departing to find a place to survive, while others remained on Mars waiting for a return or a solution. This aligns with the idea that an advanced Martian civilization may have attempted to preserve its legacy by sending life, technology, or genetic material to other worlds before its collapse. Again, this remains entirely speculative and unverified. (15) The implications of discovering a pyramid on Mars. The discovery of a pyramid on Mars would radically alter our understanding of the universe and our place within it. Such a finding would have far-reaching consequences from science to popular culture, and would trigger a surge of questions and challenges for humanity. First and foremost, discovering a pyramid on Mars would be undeniable evidence of intelligent extraterrestrial life. Until now, all signs of life on Mars have been limited to indications of ancient microbial activity. A complex structure like a pyramid would suggest that an advanced civilization not only existed on Mars, but also developed sophisticated architectural and technological capabilities. From a scientific standpoint, the presence of a pyramid on the red planet would open entirely new avenues of research. Experts would seek to determine the structure's age, the materials used in its construction, and the engineering techniques involved. Additionally, analyzing the pyramid could provide valuable insights into the geological and climatic history of Mars, helping scientists better understand how the planet evolved into its current state. Culturally, the discovery of a Martian pyramid would have an immediate impact on global society. Images and reports of the structure would spread rapidly across the media, igniting widespread public debate. Fascination with Mars and the possibility of contact with advanced civilizations would intensify, inspiring a new wave of science fiction, art, and literature. From a religious perspective, such a discovery would prompt a re-evaluation of long-held beliefs and doctrines. Many religions interpret the universe through an earth-centered lens, viewing humanity as the focal point of divine creation. Confirming intelligent life on another planet would challenge these views, forcing religious leaders and followers to reinterpret sacred texts and teachings about the origin and purpose of life. In the technological realm, it could reveal advancements far beyond our current understanding. If the structure showed signs of sophisticated engineering, scientists would undoubtedly attempt to decode its systems and replicate its innovations. The political and social implications would also be profound. Nations and space agencies would feel compelled to collaborate more closely in exploring and studying Mars to understand any extraterrestrial findings. At the same time, competition to access and analyze the pyramid could intensify, generating both cooperation and tension among nations and private space entities with vested interests. This discovery would also spur greater investment in space exploration. Humanity would feel more inspired than ever to pursue continuous missions to Mars and other planets, seeking answers and undiscovered technologies. Ultimately, the psychological and philosophical impact of discovering a Martian pyramid cannot be overstated. Confirmation that we are not alone in the universe would fundamentally transform how we perceive our existence and purpose. Humanity might begin to see itself as part of a larger cosmic community, an idea that could foster global unity or deepen divisions and conflict. 16. The skeptics. arguments against a Martian pyramid. One of the core principles of skepticism is the principle of parsimony, also known as Occam's razor. It suggests that when multiple explanations exist for a phenomenon, the simplest one is usually correct. Applied to the alleged Martian pyramids, this principle favors natural explanations over artificial ones. Instead of concluding that complex structures were built by an advanced civilization, scientists believe that the shapes seen on Mars can be explained by geological processes such as erosion, meteor impacts, and volcanic activity. In particular, geologists present some of the strongest criticisms. These specialists have extensively studied Martian terrain using data from numerous space missions, including Viking, Mars Global Surveyor, and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. Based on their research, formations that some interpret as pyramids are actually natural geological features. Mesas, craters, and eroded hills may appear artificial from certain angles or under specific lighting conditions. However, upon closer examination, there is no evidence of intentional construction. Another key argument is the complete lack of direct evidence for intelligent life on Mars. To date, no concrete signs of advanced civilizations have been found on the red planet. Current and upcoming missions continue to search for clues of past or present life, but none have found anything resembling artificial structures. The absence of tools, technology, or any remnants of intelligent construction supports the skeptical viewpoint. Ultimately, skepticism is grounded in a commitment to scientific rigor. Hypotheses must be supported by strong, repeatable evidence. So far, claims about Martian pyramids lack verified proof and rely more on subjective interpretation than objective data. 17. Mars, a fascinating planet. As humanity's potential first step toward other worlds, Mars inspires deep curiosity and great anticipation. It is a land of extremes, a planet that appears barren, yet contains landscapes so spectacular they surpass anything found on Earth. One of the most astonishing features of Mars is Valles Marineris, a formation that challenges the imagination with its immense scale. This canyon system, located near the Martian equator, stretches more than 2,500 miles, 4,000 tall incline, nearly 1/4 of the planet's entire circumference. To put it simply, Valles Marineris is longer than the United States from coast to coast and deeper than the Grand Canyon. Another colossal feature of Mars is Olympus Mons, the largest known volcano in the solar system. It rises to a height of 13 miles, 21 kilometers, about 3 times taller than Mount Everest. Its slope is relatively gentle, indicating that it formed through long-lasting repeated lava flows over millions of years. On Earth, tectonic plates constantly shift, distributing volcanic activity over time. On Mars, however, the crust remains stationary, allowing volcanoes to grow in the same location for millions of years. In the southern hemisphere lies the Hellas Impact Basin, one of the largest depressions in the solar system. This enormous crater, measuring about 1,400 miles, 2,300 kilometers across, was created by an asteroid impact billions of years ago. The North Pole of Mars is also a breathtaking sight, with massive ice caps stretching across the region during the Martian winter. These polar caps are made of frozen water and solid carbon dioxide, commonly known as dry ice. As the seasons change, the cap expands and contracts, creating dramatic visual patterns. By contrast, the South Pole exhibits equally intriguing shapes. One of the most fascinating features is the so-called Martian spiders, radial networks of channels that form when carbon dioxide ice sublimates, transitioning directly from solid to gas. Beyond these geological wonders, Mars also has extensive dune fields that sweep across vast regions. Shaped by the wind, these dunes form intricate patterns that constantly shift over time. In some areas, the dunes appear as dark streaks sharply contrasting with the planet's red terrain, while in others, they resemble gentle waves rolling across a sea of sand. Another notable location is Arsia Mons, part of the Tharsis volcanic region. Although smaller than Olympus Mons, it is still a massive and impressive structure. Its crater shows signs of relatively recent volcanic activity, suggesting that Mars may have remained geologically active more recently than previously believed. 18. NASA's rovers. Since the first successful landing of the Mars Pathfinder mission in 1997, rovers have played a crucial role in uncovering the mysteries of the Red Planet. The Spirit rover landed in 2004, and its twin Opportunity marked a new era in Mars exploration. They traversed vast plains and craters, discovering minerals such as hematite and gypsum, substances that only form in the presence of water. Notably, Opportunity found small iron-rich spheres known as Martian blueberries, compelling evidence that liquid water once existed on Mars for extended periods. The Curiosity rover landed in Gale Crater in 2012 and pushed exploration even further, equipped with advanced instruments, including high-resolution cameras, a chemical laboratory, and a drill. It analyzed sediments and rocks that once lay at the bottom of an ancient lake. Curiosity detected simple organic compounds in drilled rock samples. While not direct evidence of life, their presence suggests that Mars once had the necessary chemical conditions to support microbial organisms. Another significant discovery by Curiosity was the detection of seasonal fluctuations in methane levels in the Martian atmosphere. On Earth, methane is largely associated with biological activity, though it can also be produced geologically. Its intermittent presence on Mars raises intriguing questions about whether a biological source might exist, although no convincing evidence has been found so far. The Perseverance rover, which landed in Jezero Crater in 2021, focuses on searching for signs of more complex ancient life. This crater was chosen because it contains an ancient river delta, an environment that, on Earth, is ideal for preserving microscopic fossils. Perseverance has been collecting sediment samples that will be returned to Earth on future missions. These samples may offer the best chance yet to discover biosignatures or compounds that indicate past life on Mars. With all these advances, a natural question arises. Could the rovers detect remnants of ancient architectural structures if they existed? The answer depends on the size, location, and preservation of such a structure. Rovers are equipped to analyze soil, rocks, and chemical compounds, but they also carry cameras and sensors capable of detecting unusual patterns in the landscape. If a rock formation stood out because of sharp angles or arrangements suggesting intentional design, scientists would certainly investigate it further. However, rovers have their limitations. Their range is restricted to areas near their landing sites, and although their cameras are powerful, they cannot survey wide regions quickly. Additionally, erosion, wind, and Martian dust may have buried or obscured any ancient structures that might exist, making them difficult to distinguish from the natural environment. Even if a rover discovered something that resembled a building, extensive analysis would still be required to determine whether it was artificial or simply the result of geological processes. 19. Could ancient structures be discovered on other planets? To explore this idea, it is essential to understand when and how life emerged on Earth, how long its development took, and whether similar conditions could have occurred earlier elsewhere in the universe. Life on Earth appeared around 3.8 billion years ago, almost immediately after the planet stabilized following its formation about 4.5 billion years ago. This rapid emergence suggests that if the right conditions exist, liquid water, a suitable atmosphere, and energy sources, life can arise relatively quickly on cosmic timescales. However, the transition from simple life forms like microbes to complex organisms took billions of years. Multicellular life did not appear until roughly 600 million years ago. And the first human civilizations arose only about 10,000 years ago, a blink of an eye in the cosmic timeline. The universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old, meaning Earth and its life emerged relatively late. Many stars and planetary systems formed billions of years before the Sun. This increases the possibility that some worlds in those older systems could have developed life long before Earth did, provided the conditions were right. If intelligent civilizations once existed on those planets, they would have had far more time to reach levels of technological and cultural advancement unimaginable to us, and may have left behind traces of their existence, such as buildings or artifacts. Within our own solar system, Mars and several icy moons, such as Europa, Enceladus, and Titan, are promising candidates in the search for past or present life. As previously discussed, Mars once had liquid water on its surface and a thicker atmosphere billions of years ago, conditions that may have supported microbial or even more complex life. Meanwhile, the icy moons possess subsurface oceans beneath their frozen crusts, heated by gravitational interactions with their parent planets. These environments could have nurtured underground ecosystems. If any of these locations once hosted intelligent civilizations in the distant past, they might have left behind architectural structures or artifacts. However, discovering such remnants would be difficult due to erosion, volcanic activity, and other geological processes. Beyond our solar system, exoplanets located within the habitable zones of their stars represent another possibility. Technological advancements, especially space telescopes, have enabled the discovery of thousands of potentially habitable worlds. If some of these planets are significantly older than Earth, they may once have hosted civilizations that no longer exist, yet left behind traces in the form of orbital structures, abandoned technology, or even faint radio signals lost over time. The search for ancient structures not only faces the challenge of determining where life may have arisen, but also the question of how long civilizations tend to survive. On Earth, many civilizations have vanished due to natural disasters, internal conflict, or climate change. On a cosmic scale, the threats faced by civilizations are even greater. Asteroid impacts, nearby supernova explosions, gamma-ray bursts, or even planetary orbital shifts could potentially wipe out advanced species. Additionally, civilizations may bring about their own downfall through war, environmental collapse, or resource exhaustion. If advanced societies once existed on other worlds and later disappeared, their structures would have been subjected to the forces of time and nature. On planets with thick atmospheres, wind and rain might erode buildings within a few million years. Meanwhile, on airless bodies like the Moon, structures would endure far longer, though still vulnerable to meteorite impacts and cosmic radiation. Even if remnants survived, detecting them would require observational technology far beyond what we currently possess. Within a galactic context, The vastness of both time and space expands the possibility, as well as the challenge, of searching for evidence of lost civilizations. In a galaxy like the Milky Way, containing at least 100 billion stars, the circumstances that lead to life and its evolution could have occurred many times, in different places and epochs. This implies that several civilizations may have existed before us, but have since gone extinct. Another challenge lies in the enormous distances between star systems, making it difficult for even advanced civilizations to interact or detect one another. If ancient structures ever existed in other galaxies, discovering them would be extremely difficult due to the limitations of our instruments, and the fact that the light reaching us from those galaxies reflects events that happened millions or even billions of years ago. 20. The Martians, a lost civilization. Imagine an ancient Martian civilization known as the Martians, thriving during a time when Mars was warm, wet, and teeming with life. The Martians emerged billions of years ago, in an era when Mars possessed vast oceans, flowing rivers, and a thick atmosphere that supported conditions similar to early Earth. This civilization, composed of intelligent beings with advanced exploratory and engineering abilities, constructed monumental architectural works that dominated their landscape. They were adapted to Martian conditions, with tall, slender bodies suited to the planet's lower gravity. Their cities rose across fertile plains and valleys near water sources, reflecting sophisticated knowledge of science and architecture. These cities were marked by towering structures reaching toward the sky, temples devoted to astronomy, and enormous pyramid-like constructions built as energy centers or spiritual hubs. But Mars was not always stable. Geological history reveals that the planet underwent dramatic transformations that led to the barren world we see today. One major factor in Mars's decline was the weakening of its magnetic field, which left the planet vulnerable to relentless bombardment by solar wind. This rapidly stripped away the atmosphere, reducing surface pressure and making liquid water impossible to sustain. As the oceans and rivers disappeared, the Martians faced an unprecedented crisis. Beyond the loss of the atmosphere, Mars also experienced significant tectonic shifts and catastrophic events such as asteroid impacts and massive volcanic eruptions in the Tharsis region. These disasters devastated the Martian ecosystem and fractured Martian society. With natural resources dwindling and the environment becoming increasingly hostile, the civilization was forced to take drastic action. They divided their efforts in two directions. One portion of the population sought survival by adapting to the new conditions, retreating into underground networks and deep caverns to shield themselves from extreme cold and radiation. The other group, driven by advanced technology and a spirit of exploration, set out to escape Mars in search of a new home. Using spacecraft engineered with superior knowledge of propulsion and energy, they traveled to other worlds within the solar system and even to distant galaxies. Over millennia, the civilizations on those planets developed myths about gods descending from the sky, myths that profoundly influenced humanity. In this way, the Martians, once on the brink of extinction, became the ancient builders, the ones who inspired great civilizations across other worlds, passing down their knowledge before disappearing entirely or blending with native populations. As time passed, the remaining structures on their home planet faded from sight or became completely buried, yet their legacy in the universe endured. 21. Conclusion. The information provided by the subject during the 1984 Mars exploration remote viewing session remains both unsettling and fascinating. However, without confirmation through direct observation and empirical data, nothing can be verified. It is possible that the descriptions shared by the subject originated from subjective perception, cultural influence, or even subconscious imagination, rather than an actual reflection of Martian reality. The details mentioned, such as megalithic structures, giant beings, and catastrophic storms, are striking, but no scientific evidence exists to support these claims. Remote viewing, although explored by the CIA and other agencies during Cold War-era experimental programs, has never been proven to be a reliable method for collecting verifiable information. Without concrete data from direct observation through space missions or advanced technological exploration, stories of this kind remain within the realm of speculation. Truth is not a predetermined destination, but a horizon that each individual must strive toward on their own. Based on the information presented, every person is free to decide which ideas to embrace, which questions to pursue, and whether to open themselves to unexpected horizons.